.05 defines warning period as 10 days starting from the date of notice unless delivered by mail, thereby adding 5 more days to the warning period. Violation may have up to 15 days.
Dr. Lamont to council in case you still need some more comments.
I'm gonna address that very last comment that was made about 7 cars. What do you expect people to do in the winter time when they can't afford to have less people living there so they can make their bills and everybody drives? But you gotta get them off the road so the snowplow can go through. What do you expect people to do? Again, I feel like the way we ticket is poverty shaming. Because so many people that live together because they can't afford to live on their own. A lot of family members, things like that. And then when they try to pile up their vehicles off the road so our snowplows can come through, they get chastised for that too. I feel like people don't take enough
because I have it using the web.
to think outside of their own situations, see that they're doing the best they can with what they've got.
Okay, so do you have a suggestion?
I feel like we should stop poverty shaming people. That's what I'm addressing that about. Like, I don't know what this keeps coming up, but what do they expect people to do? What do the citizens expect other citizens to do? This is gonna come up again this year. The police department's gonna deal with it. They have to deal with it again this year. I just don't see where the grace is in any of this conversation that we keep having about excess cars in the driveways whenever the snowplows are coming through. Look, it's like beating a dead horse.
Okay, so to apply that, are you suggesting we should modify the code and allow for parking somewhere else?
I've suggested before that we only require people off the road during evenings of snow. And that was shot down. Nobody agreed to that. that it's in there, yes, we did, do you remember us having that conversation in here?
I actually,
It was one of the very first meetings that we had.
I actually thought that's how it used to be before we changed it.
It was, and then we changed it, and then that's when he said he's not gonna have officers ticket people for being on the road when it's not snowing. And I feel like our policy should reflect that. We shouldn't be ticketing people for being on the road when there's no snow. And then when they're trying to get off the road and doing the best that they can to do that, stop punishing them for that too. They can only do so much.
Okay, so, just to kind of build off of that.
But we're not reviewing that tonight.
Well, we're
The whole code enforcement policy.
reviewing how we're going to administer code
Okay,
enforcement.
agreed.
That's the topic on the agenda. But if you want to address the actual code, we could probably go just about as deep as saying we want to put specifics on a future agenda. I don't know that we could.
Yeah, I'd rather stick to
Yeah.
the topic at hand tonight. If we want to
Just-
address that
Can
at
we
a later
still put this
meeting.
on the next work session, the snow code? Parking
Okay,
code,
so-
yeah, for parking, the timing and all that stuff.
What I'm gonna do is, as we go through this, I will make a list of enforcement codes that we want to address, and we'll put that on a future agenda. I've noted that one. If there's others, we'll just add it to the same discussion, but trying to place this in context of going through this, I think that if we do have the code, whatever it's landed on, we have to be consistent in the way that we apply it. That's, I think, and I think the challenge has been, we have not been consistent because it's been difficult, and we need to figure out how to make it easier so that we can be more consistent. So, application of code enforcement, I think, is the topic.
So do we want to go through each of these sections, or we've got civil citations, abatement, scope? I mean,
We can do it that way. I'd be happy to. I mean, if we want to start, let's start with the abatement because it seems to be one of the most difficult. Over the years, this has gone back and forth while I've seen, I mean, even before I was on council, I've seen it go back and forth. And what it does is people push towards, okay, start abating people. Well, then what happens is we start abating people and they don't pay the abatement bill. So we just spend a lot of city money and maybe it changes, but then the expectation is great. If I don't do it, the city will come do it for me. So then we've pushed back towards, we'll warn first and threaten abatement.
so I worry about just abating everything, and especially this year we had 3,000. I mean, we could blow that out of the water
in a
if
week.
we were abating everything. My question is there a way to enforce, somehow say, hey, you're in violation, you have this many days to correct, otherwise we're gonna get an estimate to have it repair or abated, and then you pay for that estimate, and then we hire that service. How could we?
I think the collection part is the tough part, and I think we touched on that a little bit before, is do we really have the power to collect on abatements? Or does it just sit out there and go uncollected?
Can we tack it on to their utility bill like we do their parking or their water?
That's recently been challenged in the state. I just sat through a meeting where they suggested that anytime you try to tack things on automatically is being challenged. I don't know the full details of the case, but I just sat in a meeting yesterday where that was brought up, that was being challenged at the Utah level, state level. I'll have to look up the case and.
Would you let me know?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of it.
But challenge whether that's valid or not.
Because I would be fine with abatement, but I would want to collect funds first, because otherwise we'll always be in the negative.
We'll always be. But how do we collect funds? And what if people just pay? That's the question.
Well, that's my question. What are our avenues to collect? If we're saying, hey, you're in violation of city code, here's a civil penalty. What are our avenues to collect a civil penalty? Just through the court system?
Yeah, but what if someone stops paying their bill?
Well,
Hey guys, can you hear me?
is this Noah?
This is Noah. Hey
Well,
guys.
thank you for identifying yourself, Noah. Welcome to the conversation.
Sorry, like, mute that guy.
Who is the voice in my head? Sorry, I had to call in on the phone and it wouldn't let me put a name in. So you were asking about how do we collect on different citations and things.
Yeah.
So with abatement, you can do a lien, and like you guys were discussing, I mean, it will go on their property tax bill, but that's a delayed reimbursement. And sometimes I've heard that sometimes it goes until, if people don't pay their taxes, it could go until a tax sale or until they sell the property, or, it could be a couple of years delayed. We've been budgeting $3,000 for the abatement. We haven't even touched it really last couple of years. So it is something that we just haven't been doing. And then as far as a civil citation, we can do a collection agency, which we also have not done. But the question at hand with the collection agency is, will they go after somebody for a $100 ticket at some point? I don't know. There's chances that we may not actually get paid. But from my experience with code enforcement and dealing with people coming in paying for their parking on the road during winter nighttime stuff, or students, like, there are a lot of honest people out there that will come and just pay their ticket. But of course there are some bad apples out there too, but we don't want people to know that we're not going to go after anybody. So I think there needs to be follow through. And so that's where those tools are available. It's just they're not very efficient.
I actually think that, like, reading through this, I think it's actually pretty clear. It says no showing of photographs, the actual violation existing on the property. So as far as noticing the violation, the failure to comply, we talk about daily violations for every day after.
Mhm.
I think it's all in here. I would say for extensions of time, I think we should put a limit on how many times it can be extended. I didn't see a limit on that.
Yeah, so I was going to say the way I've laid it out, there's a few different things council can weigh in on here as far as guiding the discussion. Is we could, you could amend the ordinance, or there could be, other budgetary type things that you could consider. I know that last time we had a good conversation. It seems like getting more code enforcement isn't exactly, more staffing isn't very popular right now. But the other one to consider is just shifting the scope of what our code enforcement officer does. But I think that was Jordan. Sounded like you were starting to talk about what's in the actual ordinance. And so, yeah, that would be obviously under your purview to, if you guys want to consider amending any of that. Like Cassie said last time, it's all there. We just need to start following it.
Yep. I do like the idea of under section of burden of proof in 605110 and things like we have where the burden of proof any defense shall be on the person raising such defense. But I'm not sure where to put it, but I want to put in here that I don't want to have them go out and do a reinspection every time. I would like to have the ability to say, look, you either send pictures of the corrected item to this email address, or you can present it in person during normal business hours and give sign-off authority for said pictures to whomever is manning the front desk.
And this is kind of what we talked about last time too, is because if they don't, and we have to go out and inspect. in
There's a
person again,
reassessment fee.
There's a fee to do so,
Yeah.
and you get charged for that.
And I think just in taking out half of the visits, I think that frees up a lot of time from our code enforcement officer. That allows that person to be able to work through their backlog without having to go and double check every single thing.
Okay, so we started down the path of, should we abate more? And, I'm not sure we answered that part of the question. I mean, you know, because we could run out of money really quick. We could.
I don't
run out
think
of
we should
funds.
abate more,
Okay.
at
So
least
what
not yet.
should we do to avoid abatement?
I
Enforce what we have.
think
First, yeah, that's a good starting point.
Okay.
first and foremost, and do we have, if we have delinquent offenders, like at what point do we stop giving them their daily, where is it, the daily?
Daily fine.
Yeah, each day of violation remains uncorrected after the expiration of the warning period shall give rise to a separate civil penalty. The city may combine any action to recover daily penalties with any other civil penalty regarding the same property or person. No civil action shall be issued for a daily violation that occurs in conjunction with another criminal violation as part of a single criminal episode, etc. I mean, good criminy, like, if they don't abate this within like a month, they're looking at thousands upon thousands of dollars.
Okay.
We probably ought to,
Now, do you have the appetite to be that heavy-handed with it?
I mean, that's what our code says.
I
Okay,
Rules
understand.
are there for a reason. Black and white gives
Okay,
people the ability to say you can't do that.
I'm just asking these questions.
but
because
I
that's what
would
we-
like to say that at some point daily, like, if someone ends up owing $2 million over the course of a year because they just refused, I know, we've crossed the line at some point.
I feel like it's not, when it gets to a point, like, if it's like mowing the lawn or something like, it, can we bill them to send out a lawn or they?
Well, that's the abatement.
That's the abatement.
Yeah, and then, but then once it's done, and then we can bill them for it, then it's not gonna, it's done, like, we make sure
So
it's
we
done.
were talking about liens,
Yeah,
and I know that that's not collected for a year, but that's still an avenue that we.
and I would love it if that's still available. I just know that something came up about that in the meeting I was in this week.
On the lien or on the property?
On the ability.
Yeah, you had it on the bill.
utility bill,
Yeah, on the bill.
but maybe not on the property.
But we should be able to lien the property.
Yeah, I think
For
those
the-
are separate.
That's the stuff that
I
they're.
do think that was
Public
separate.
works things, yeah,
I mean, it doesn't mean we can't do the utility bill, it just means it's being looked at.
yeah, I feel like that's
That's
the easiest
correct.
way, if that challenge doesn't go through and it's something that we can do, I feel like that's the easiest way is to put it
Yeah,
on.
we
the
need to
utility
find out
bill.
if we can really.
It also just
That's
brings
what-
it,
yeah.
it just makes it more personal and, brings it back.
Do we
closer-
need to have
closer
a
to
cap
offenders.
though? Like it's a daily fine.
So I think for a
Until
safety
you-
violation,
Cap.
for a safety thing, I think it goes until, but if it's just like, non-safety code enforcement, I'm willing to cap it at like $2,000 or something like that.
I think that's fair.
I don't want someone owing $15,000 because they didn't cut their
Yeah.
weed.
Well, at what point do they say I reached the cap? I won't complain if anything.
more than that.
Yeah,
Well-
$2,000 cap plus cost of abatement. So there's civil penalty cap plus cost of abatement.
yeah.
Yeah.
Chief, go ahead, William.
I was just, I mean, and thinking about the enforcement side on this, this would require
Yeah.
maybe a definition, Jordan, of what safety versus non-safety code
I was thinking the
enforcement is. Like we could say as an example, well, weeds look bad, so we're trying to get those taken care of, but weeds too far into the summer create a fire hazard, so at which point did that become safety and no longer aesthetic, if you will? A car parked in the driveway that's leaking oil is going to end up into the stormwater drain at some point. So at what point does that now become safety instead of aesthetic? I think we.
And some of the complaints that we've seen are,
career as a lawyer.
okay, so, well, and some of
He
the
likes this.
Mom always wanted.
I was-
clarification, some of the complaints we've had, that we went from, unsightly to now blocking, sight vision at an intersection. And so that, at what point does it become
2
safety?
feet.
I would think that every single code that's in here is,
It relates
it
eventually to
relates
safety.
back to safety.
It works out to be like for weeds, you take
Oh,
a height
it's-
thing, 2 feet, once you hit above 2 feet, then you can't, you're not gonna be able to see, it's gonna block.
But I think
vision
the
of
point
things.
of getting it under control before that is.
Well, yeah, but at what point is it a safety thing, about 2 feet, you can't, after that.
We already
you
have all of
car.
that in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Like we have a recommended height, I think it's
Yeah,
actually
it's
18 inches.
Yeah.
But your only reason for wanting to delineate between safe and a safety issue and non is for a fine cap.
Yeah, if, I would like to find a way to give someone the opportunity to not be thousands of dollars in debt.
I'll
to
propose
the city.
something, I'll propose that maybe the safety issue is more a speed of addressing it rather than how much you cap the payment of. If it's actually a threat to somebody else, we should probably address it sooner and give a shorter grace period to fix it. Just a thought.
On that line, can I ask
Yeah.
the attorney a question on, do you have, on civil penalties like this, do you have the ability and discretion to lower? Than what's, so I mean,
They could always come back and
what you can
we
do
have that in
is
here.
not have a cap,
Okay.
and then the prosecutor can say, you know, consider the context and the situation that the homeowner's in, could say, okay, we're not gonna go after the full $5,000, but you'll need to pay 2,500. You know,
Yes.
whatever.
Is there a cap by state statute that we can only, they don't cap it at all?
No. I mean, at some point, you can get it, you can just abate it, and then, I don't know, if they have a fine on top of it, you. enforce it.
But then don't we have to have a policy as far as what we're going to, why we're going to be lenient on one and not another, that,
Well, no, there's always discretion in prosecution.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah, you have to deal with that every week and on Wednesdays when he's dealing with the court.
One of the things I like about what Brody's suggesting here, though, is that the threat of a larger fine might get them to show up and take care of it or address it. The leniency that we're able to apply in resolution might be what we need to reconcile a person's position. But at least by being consistent in the fine accumulation, we at least put the pressure on the person to resolve it one way or another.
I feel like if we follow this in the way of timeline, like after it gets to a certain point, we just send somebody out and do it and then we slap you with the bill. It should avoid getting to that excessive,
Yeah.
like when weeds become a safety thing, you've got 72 hours to cut it. If not, we're sending someone out, they're gonna cut it and you just got $150 bill on your, if we can add it to the utility bill, I feel like that's the easiest thing to do, if, but I would be for that. But
there's not gonna
it
be,
gets to the point where, like, what are the things that we're talking about right now? The
But what if-
weeds mostly, like, what are the most serious things that,
but on
code
vacant
enforcement.
parcels, you're not gonna have a utility bill.
that's true, but vacant parcels are usually like business companies that are owning them. Yeah, well, private people can own.
You'd still have to do something with those.
Yeah.
Since a lot of what we're discussing, effective mayor, a lot of what we're discussing are hypotheticals. You know, can I suggest that maybe we make the administrative and enforcement changes that are being proposed by staff and see how it goes. I honestly don't think the abatement situation is going to be that often. Most people come in compliance, either through the warning or through the fine. But I'd like to see, you know, these are changes that are proposed from what we have been doing. And I think maybe if we try them out and we can refine them.
And I think
Yeah, I agree.
the biggest part of what we put in the packet of suggested changes was who administrates on which side of the property line. You know, once it gets into the street, that now that becomes a police issue because it deals with parking. And if it's on the homeowner's side of the sidewalk, then it's code enforcement. And that would seriously change the available labor to deal with those kind of issues. So that's what was written, and I kind of think there was some logic in that.
I would think if it were weeds, it would be on both sides.
You're right, but there's
Yeah.
not weeds in the street. What I'm saying is,
Legality question. Do we face any trespassing issues with sending people out to do it?
We don't, but I do think you face a practical issue of finding someone who's willing to go out and do it. But just site, Willa County, we did an RFP for abaters, if you will, to mow weeds either along the side of the road or in people's yards. They got 0 people responding. The landscape companies have their great commercial contracts and they don't have time to do this sort of stuff when they can be doing Walmart or Smith's or the LDS Church or whoever else has.
Because this is one-off.
And these are one-offs. And number 2, the LDS Church and Smith's don't shoot at you when you come onto their property. So I think it's great to say we will have an abatement process. It's more difficult to actually have one.
The one thing I didn't see in any of the staff notes was the having them email in the results.
Yeah,
That wasn't, at least I didn't see it in the staff write-up.
So how would you propose we apply it?
The burden of proof will be on
Just
the
when you,
offender.
when you say, when you, like, you have this amount of time to correct this, please take pictures of the abated issue to this email address. Or you can bring photos in
And
person.
that can be on the notice.
Yeah, exactly.
Or there would be a reassessment fee.
Yeah, I don't know if that, I think the idea of having them send us the proof is a good idea. I don't know if we need to amend the ordinance to say that, or if we can just start doing that, but if we wanted to put it in there, right now it just says that at the end of the 10-day warning period, the citation will be issued. It doesn't say how we verify that, you know, it's assuming that they correct the problem within 10 days and we have to go verify that, I'm assuming.
I think.
So we could add a little clause in there that
we should
says,
add it,
Yeah,
so
I think
it's
that needs to be
clear.
clear.
That leaves too much room for
How do you
assumption.
verify it? Well, what do you do if somebody just photoshops it?
Well, then your neighbors are gonna call again,
I mean,
That's.
and they're gonna be like, wait a minute, we just got an email.
You know,
saying
if they're willing to
it's
put that much effort,
you'd think they'd go mow the lot, but you know.
they would go in the lawn, and you know what, if they get written up again, it's now a second time violation, and that's a higher penalty.
Do we need to amend the code if we're having a reinspection fee?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I think if we're putting the burden on them to provide photographic evidence that it's been corrected, then we also need to say there's a reinspection fee. If you don't send us that in, we have to come out and check it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Like, that way it saves everybody time to get an email.
I would love to have the clerk enforcement officer to be able to check, go through, you know, get here at every time in the morning, go through their email, check. Oh, this one still hasn't yet, okay. Check.
yeah, the codes could say that there's a reinspect fee, but then we would have to make sure that we update the consolidated fee schedule to make sure that's in there too, to match.
But yeah, agree, and I like the idea of having delineation, I parking tickets historically, probably
Yeah.
should transition back. So,
Okay.
that's all I've got. Let's see, wait, I think I have one more thing. Oh, yeah, extensions, I think we should put a limit on the number of times we're gonna grant the extension.
I agree.
It's not codified right now.
Like 2, it's like plenty, and
And they need it, and the thing is, it says there has to be some type of extenuating circumstances.
Why would we offer more than one extension?
Why would we?
I wrote only once, but
Yeah. I think one extension is.
I mean, if they're out of town, then they're gonna have to figure something out. So I
That's for the extension.
sure. Mhm. And then, yeah, no, that covers all of mine.
So I would just bring to the conversation that we had issues with people with sprinkler and water violations in the past. And because of the extensions and the billing cycles, we had people basically going all year. So I know that we've got to tighten that up. We should learn from that lesson. That was a difficult situation when people were appealing 6 warnings and, yeah.
some point, you gotta know.
So right now, I think we've changed it. The way this reads is the notice is the warning.
It is.
10 days later, it automatically becomes a fee. And I think I'd be willing to grant one extension if you appeal. But
If you appeal.
if you appeal. If you're saying, I cannot get this done in this time, I've been trying to find contractor who's gonna cut my trees. I was able to schedule them for this date, it's after my date, can I have till this date?
Okay, so this is, this is fair in a lot of cases, but what about bigger cases? Like, I had somebody write me an email and say, I'm being fined for not developing my yard after 5 years. And, we do have that as a code, you have to improve your property. You can't just leave it be bearing weeds. And he said, I couldn't possibly get this done. Now, in this case, I mean, my first call was to actually a local charitable group to try and see if they could keep it help. But, the task was large at that point. It was very large, because he was talking about having not improved his property for 5 years.
But see, the problem is, and I don't want to poverty shame, but at some point, how did him waiting 5 years become my problem?
You're right.
Well, and also there's the responsibility to the rest of the neighbor, but it's.
You plant a couple trees, that's all the code, isn't it? We have
Well,
10% now, isn't it, something like that?
Yeah, you have to do 10% lawn, and you can put,
You have to make progress consistently is
Right.
the way it's
Just to
measured.
show something.
yeah, so,
You don't have to be done, you just have to be making progress.
but at some point, you say,
I
well,
agree with you. I agree with you.
you're going to pay the fee.
You can go to one of these empty lots and chop a poplar right at the thing and put it right in the ground, and next year that sucker's growing. Trust me, I've done it. It's not hard. I agree with you. After a certain point, there's not an excuse to make up for it.
And to be clear, like, I'm okay if they can show progress. I'm willing to grant, some
Well, that's
type
in the
of,
code right now, Charlie.
yeah, if they can show progress, if it's a huge task, we can write in there that as long as they can show progress, then we're okay, but at some point, my patience will run out.
So I want to go back to the point that I think the biggest change that I think we were probably going to implement here was just the definition of where we send a code enforcement person, where we send an officer. And I think, we all agreed on that, because we brought it up, and we didn't really get the.
So did I hear city property is police, personal property is code enforcement?
But where were we talking about, like at that?
No, street.
It's
Street and
really,
city,
I
yeah,
know, but like, is Park Strip,
I thought
No,
Park
Park
Strip
Strip
would
would-
be code
yeah,
enforcement.
it's
also.
really which side of the curb.
yeah.
Once you get to the curb, it becomes police.
sidewalk, you mean?
Well,
No,
curb.
you don't
No,
want
'cause we don't want police
because
dealing
you
with
don't
Park
want-
Oh, got it.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah,
want
right,
that,
You're right,
curb,
okay.
yeah.
but it is, once you get to the curb,
Hey guys, I think the way most cities that I've compared with say that parking issues within the right of way or public property. So the right of way actually begins at the back of the sidewalk. That's where the property line is. So I guess if somebody parked a car in a park strip, that would technically be, but I would imagine that's pretty rare. But
So
yeah,
we're
we're
not talking
the
about-
majority of these are trailers parked on the street. The vast majority.
I feel like anything that, I thought, it's still we're clear, like all weeds in park strips and stuff like that would be code enforcement. We're just accepting like the parking, so I wouldn't expect.
Parking.
police to think
vehicles and
about too many
trailers.
weeds.
No,
You know?
vehicles and trailers.
So,
Because
yeah,
what
so I
about-
feel like that should be
You're gonna put
Police.
the unregistered vehicle?
any, yeah.
Well, no, I was gonna say parking over a
Cause they can have
sidewalk.
tickets, like they can give them,
Because then it's a vehicle, so maybe
So-
it's identified with
Because
the,
parking over the sidewalk, we'd probably want
yeah,
police to handle that too.
Yeah, if it's with a vehicle that's registered, in the past, there's been great coordination with Leonella and police, but she does have to call in and they'll look up license plate numbers. The other problem is that the hours that she works is a lot of these trailer parking problems are people that are coming in after work and the trailer's still there and, they're moving it around and kind of evading some of that. So the hours and the license plate lookup is what's limiting for Leonella a lot of times with parking related things.
okay, so that brings up another question. Should code enforcement have different hours? And I'm not saying that,
That's a good question,
it's a question.
because you can't engage with people being home.
That's right. So is having an 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock schedule actually avoiding the most useful time of the day? Maybe that job should have a little different schedule. Runs a little bit later in the day because it starts later and runs later so that you can actually catch people at home.
I feel like that would need to be a seasonal shift, because come the darker months, it ends up becoming parking issues is what normally things are. But the more lighter during the day months, it's usually weeds and things like that. So, and having our code enforcement stay till 7 in like January doesn't really make sense if most of the things that are being cited in that time frame are usually parking things that the PD would do.
Or it could be just a couple of days a week that they work later so that they can.
I like that better.
But if we're removing the
Oh,
parking
we
from
will
code
be-
You're
enforcement,
right. Maybe
Yeah.
that
to me,
takes
it
care of
doesn't really require a scheduled. Because who cares if someone's home or not for weeds or.
Yeah, that's a good
You
point.
could say-
Ideally, she's not going out to talk to people. She's doing the citation, placing it on the door, and the rest of it we handle via email or at the front desk.
I feel like that gives no room for grace though. Like, but I would think code enforcement, when they see the same stuff over and over again, I would get curious, why is it still like this? And I would want to talk to them, like, what's going on?
But
Like,
she has an option.
I know it's not their problem.
I worry about our code enforcement officer.
I worry about all code enforcement officers, everybody don't like them.
I know, and so I would prefer to limit her pounding on doors.
Yeah, I think it works better if it works.
Yeah, and we can talk to her about how difficult it is to actually
contact.
engage with people. And, you know, if she's having a tough time and, you know, I think we can find solutions to that. If she's been able to get a hold of people and.
There's no reason
She
to
can
back up.
contact via.
And honestly, I'm just.
No, I mean, I've,
Questions. I don't.
I was
know
gonna say,
Good question, good question.
I'm not.
I've
pushing for
talked to
any-
Leonella a lot about her interactions with people, and it is rough sometimes and it is frustrating. And I worry about her safety sometimes. And if it's after hours, after dark, sometimes even, you know, that honestly, I would be concerned about that.
No,
Yeah, I agree. She sticks a standard shift,
it's not gonna be. useful.
and hopefully most of her interactions are via email.
Okay, so to move this along forward, well, let me say, you know, there are other subjects we haven't covered that you want to bring up. And then we'll go to the chief. Because I think we still, I mean, we're gonna have to decide which ones we implement and which ones we address, but we still do need a better solution. Chief, what did you want to add?
Yeah, I was just curious. So one of the things that sounded like the council had some problems with was the idea and the expenditure of time in a re-inspection, right? Ongoing, daily, whatever that might be. And I was just curious if maybe Colin could shed a little light to this piece, but this is in the civil realm. So the burden of proof falls to the defendant, not
Yes.
to the government in this circumstance.
Correct.
So when we go out on an initial inspection and Leonella does everything that's required in the code to document that inspection and the person gets the warning. And it may help that if this were actually delineated in code, what's required of the person, meaning they need to send in proof that this was corrected. But after, on the 15th day, as an example, if she had not received proof that it had been corrected, could she just file on the initial violation? Because it is still a violation. It's just a warning at the point, but there's no reason for her at that point to think that it's been corrected because the person didn't do whatever was outlined in code. So theoretically, the violation, I guess what I'm asking is theoretically, could the violation be charged without a re-inspection? And I understand that would make it so you wouldn't have these necessarily ongoing fees, but the person would get noticed much faster that they had actually been
I
fined.
feel like with that, we definitely need to make sure people know, you have to send this in, otherwise we're going to find you.
Well, I think you put that in the warning. If you say that if we don't hear from you by this date, it will become a
But
chart.
like in big bold letters, because people will only read the first couple lines and
So
then.
you're saying don't worry about a reinspect fee,
No,
It's a
yeah.
violation.
you're in violation,
And
you're,
If you haven't-
The burden is on you to provide proof has been corrected.
Yeah,
If it's
or
not-
it will become this.
And I won't tell you that I would have this portion fully memorized or know what it is, but there is a process of where a person could come in and, let's say, talk to a hearing officer. if I remember right.
There is.
So just as an example, if the person's like, hey, I got this fine, but I cleaned everything up, I forgot to take the pictures. My assessment would be that they would like ask for a hearing with the hearing officer. The hearing officer would see the pictures that say the property is in compliance. And then would have the discretion to be able to dismiss whatever it was, because in actuality, the whole goal of code enforcement just never, doesn't really happen this way, but the whole goal of code enforcement is compliance.
Yeah,
Right? And if the person just forgot to do it, but they get a fee that they didn't feel was entitled to it, we have something already in code that says how do you, what's your redress, right? If that were to happen.
Yes.
yeah, and although in here, it does say that, let's say that they come to the hearing officer and show you pictures that are being resolved. And the date on the picture is after the date that the violation passed. According to our code right now, they would still get fined.
Yeah,
Which they could, that's what I'm saying,
But they
but they would have the ability to,
Yeah.
yeah.
again, the
Yeah.
portion is compliance, that's
Discretion.
what you're.
Do we give them discretion to limit it? I think,
the court always has, because we're pushing the charge, so the court always has its own discretion.
So I'm sure it's written.
I like that, then we don't even have to do a reinspection.
So
You
I
know,
bring that up just because I don't know what, I wanted to make sure, yes, that could happen, and then two, what would you actually have to do to the code to be able to do that, but that would save some of this back and forth for Leonel, and it would limit actual interactions.
If we were to do this, I would suggest that we would probably have to have some kind of information campaign that basically said to people,
We're gonna enforce
due
our
to the
code.
due to the high volume of code enforcement complaints, this is gonna change, and this is how it will change. You will now, something that explains we're doing something different.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't, you just do it?
I think if you have a notice and you don't read it, because the thing is, I'm just picturing the Facebook campaign that says, we're changing the way we're doing penalties.
This time we're gonna enforce
This
it
time-
and we mean it.
Grab onto your wallets, people.
No, legally.
And after 20 days, you will be fined. And I'm just seeing the Facebook post explode.
Okay, well, I proposed it on the bottom of as you contact Jordan Savage.
I feel like on the notice, we just need to make
Yeah,
sure
as long
it's big, bold,
As long
like,
as the notice is very clearly
yeah.
Okay,
Bold everything
delineates
on the note.
what is expected of them for the resolution. I doubt someone's gonna be like, you know what, I think I saw a post that I'm supposed to do on this on Facebook.
okay, fair enough.
People jump to things very quickly, so if you start with the point first and then explain it, they're more likely to read it. So if you start with that, if this violation isn't adhered to in 15 days, you will be, and then explain it, people are like, hold on, wait, what? And
Okay,
You can even give them a QR code for where.
I hate those things.
Love QR codes.
you do.
Yeah, I don't think we need an explanation that we're about to enforce. our-
Well, no, I mean, yeah, but I mean, the QR code could actually link them to the email address they're supposed to.
Oh,
send it to.
yeah.
So
Okay,
that's-
so we've more than doubled our conversation on this, and we've tried to wrap it up more than once. So the question is, no, it's fine. I'm not opposed to that. Could we wrap it up at this point? It sounds like we're kind of agreed.
like, everybody.
Okay. All right, so we'll bring back some more revisions, but with the idea that we will pass it in the next meeting, something. And then I want to move us on to the next, which is going to be extremely popular as well, and that would be noise ordinance amendments.
Those are like the only real thing we got on, because they're just gonna take forever.
So noise ordinance amendments, I think we should start with Jordan on this one.
I actually like the way, I mean. I'm not, so we talk about continuous sound is now 5 minutes. We have cyclical varying noise. The impulsive noise, we say noise characterized by brief outbursts, usually less than 1 second in duration. Of sound decibels, so we describe what those things are. And then we had various fixes throughout.
But the cyclically varying noise, we had that in there before. But we were saying
It
that
was the
we,
impulsive noise that we had.
the addition of that.
So right now, we added in, for purpose of this section, offensive sound means any sound that exceeds the limits set forth in subsection B at least 3 times in a 5-minute period.
Yeah.
If that will address what seems to be
Where it's not
the
10
primary
minutes
complaint.
continuous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
Okay, so just consider for a minute, and this is again, just bringing the ordinance or the question forward.
Mhm.
Consider for a moment that, by changing this code to read this way, we quadruple the reports of noise ordinance. How do we handle that?
Legally,
Okay, my point is that we are being a lot more lenient on what's a noise ordinance, and so this could now be in the vein of that dang dog barks.
no, animal control.
Okay,
and this specifically, says, I can't remember where.
They took all
Sorry,
of this,
yeah.
and he used to do nothing with animals.
or maybe my neighbor keeps shooting off, M80s in his backyard, so I get,
That would be illegal.
okay, so, I mean, my point is.
Keep going, we got it.
See-
We can
see
talk about
fireworks.
the all day long.
Okay,
See the fireworks
Okay.
section,
all right, construction,
construction is covered.
That's on your 6 AM.
okay,
Snow removal,
I have
5
a
AM.
question. Do you want to move that forward earlier in the day? As
No.
the city grows, does the Robinson waste need to start earlier to get the garbage collected? I don't know.
I think we specifically excluded.
No, I think garbage.
Oh,
trucks
right.
are here.
Was it 6
Garbage
a.m.?
collection
Yeah,
is at 6 AM.
It
Yeah,
currently
it's
says
just-
6. We want to leave it at 6. That's my.
Right,
Oh,
right
yeah.
now, they only,
6.
I don't think they should have that.
they only collect 4 days a week, so they really have to go to
they
5
can
days.
go to.
All right.
I think that's,
Not on my street.
What about these planes that are flying over like nonstop right now? Can we, a noise ordinance them?
welcome, freedom, nope. Yeah,
Not the jets. It has nothing to do with freedom. These little single engine planes that
Oh.
keep flying over.
but
Technically, I think the airspace is outside of Syracuse jurisdiction.
it is.
Oh my
How many miles
God.
up?
Okay, all right, so are there other changes that you want to make? Or do you think this solves it? As a general, I'm gonna be shocked if you all are done in 2 minutes on this one.
I thought it met the complaints that I've been hearing. I think,
I mean, this addresses what we had talked about last time.
Because we're talking about repetitive,
Yeah,
like
this-
something that's a continuous situation, not like a one party, someone had a party one night or like things like that. The dogs or all animals or animal control, they said that. That is a them problem now.
Okay, so I'm gonna invite the chief back into the conversation. You have been the one that's been facing these complaints, not personally, but your team. You think that this solves, or this helps or hurts your case and your ability to do your job?
I like some of. I like some of the additions, for example, like maybe just like the impulsive noise thing, so if it's, again, these are brief. And you would be able to maybe stand in a neighborhood at a different point and say, this looks like the ambient, and then go to the person's house or whatever it is and say, all right, this just went up to 40, whereas the rest of the neighborhood is 30. I still, I guess, think, well, before I get to that one, I mean, I guess this was in the code before and I didn't know what it was, but I'm not sure who's gonna do the math on that, on the definitions piece, because I don't know what any of that means. This sound pressure level in particular, I have no clue what that means.
It's the
Neither
thump
did
of a
I, so I
bass.
left it
Is that like
alone.
an air horn? Is that
No,
what
it's like the
supposed to be?
thump of a bass.
You know what I mean?
You can physically feel.
It's 20
sound.
times the logarithm to the base 10 ratio of the root speed. I thought this was a joke to start with. And shall be 20 micropascals.
Who added math to the?
I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know what that is, so I don't know how we're going
So
to
it would
work
be
sound
enforced.
pressure, because I don't know what that is. Or how we would even determine.
In other words, it wouldn't be enforced because it's too difficult to understand.
I likely agree with you that, and
What
That-
section is that in?
Impulse and
It's
noise.
in the
R.
definition.
Oh, yeah.
Or page 3.
And the reason I bring that up, I mean, again, I do think it's very difficult to do from that standpoint, but it shows up again. It shows up again below the chart.
Is that what this is about then? Is if someone's like, basically the base of someone's car, just teenage kids running their radio for like 45 minutes to an hour outside? Is that kind of like what this?
I think what it's meant to
I
do
don't
is
see what you're
capture
talking about.
Yeah, I can't print it either.
in R.
I apologize, let me.
So I,
Not in a.
It's in the definitions.
It's in
under
definitions.
paragraph R.
Definitions,
It
letter.
was already there, and I don't know what it was either, so I didn't touch it.
so
It shows up in domestic power equipment,
Bid 16.
which typically has a already known rating on it.
yeah,
That you can look at the piece of equipment and it will say, you know, the specs will
in
have.
theory, this addresses the noise isn't at a level, audible level that is offensive, but you're feeling the motion or, you know, the sound wave that's affecting your house. Or
Okay.
that's what the theory here is trying to
On the
address.
device.
And do we have some, yeah, I was gonna say, no one's gonna be doing any of that.
No,
That's what I'm saying, is it's like,
Okay.
I don't know what that means and how we're, but, yeah, that was in there before, maybe it's just never.
Maybe
came to
let's
play.
revisit the sound pressure level, see what.
But the sound pressure becomes part of the ordinance later.
I'm so biased on this topic that anything I add to this is gonna be so overly negative, that I don't like sound of, over loud things, I don't like them. So I feel like everybody should be getting tickets for noise ordinance, but
So that sound pressure concept again, just.
So yeah, let's just reevaluate that and see if there's a better way to.
Yeah, that's.
it could be just stricken
Isn't our,
because it can't be applied.
Yeah, agree.
isn't our device, doesn't it measure the sound pressure level in dBAs?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's,
sound pressure measurer.
I think the device does the math for you.
I don't know, I mean.
Cause,
Yeah, that's-
'cause that's what a DVA is that equation, I think.
Yes. Yeah, let's take a look at it. And if we have a way to measure it, that's fine. I just remembered, there was one other item that was sent to me from one of the residents. They requested, that on the week, that they say weekday, that they sent me Salt Lake City's code. And Salt Lake City code lists weekdays and Saturdays. They start at 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. We go from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. They said, can we line up with Salt Lake City?
No,
And move it to 9 instead of 10.
Do we need to?
no.
I'm passing along the request. And then on Sundays and holidays, it's instead of 9 to 7 a.m., 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. They request Sundays and holidays be 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. instead of 7 a.m.
I'm not waiting till 9 a.m. to mow my lawn.
Second.
So you better take it in.
I just want to make sure I brought it up since
So they,
they
Sunday is lawn mowing day.
start your lawnmower at 7 a.m.
Yeah, usually,
Your grass is still wet at that time.
not in the summer, it's not. When you're
Okay,
mowing.
so, what I'm hearing is nobody's really interested in changing the
Okay,
hours.
I just want to make sure I brought it up. since that was a
Okay.
specific request.
Others? Are we good with this one then?
So.
Okay, well, we have time to think about it if you don't, but I think we're agreed. Well, let's move on to the next one.
I'm sorry, next business session.
Next business session.
Thank you.
Next item is, regarding acquisition of land, and this is gonna be a really short item actually, folks, because we've already agreed to buy these, and we've already got estimates, and we've already actually modified these lands. But to get the final deed, UDOT has asked us if we would actually pass a resolution that these are for public use. We didn't actually take that step. Nobody knew that we needed to, but
Do we have to? What if we
I don't
decide
think
we
we
want to sell
have
them?
to, but. Well, one of them's a water storage.
I'm just saying. Sure, but what if at some point in the future, we're like, we don't need that, and we would like to sell the land?
I think that that's still available. I think that this just has to do with the actual purchase. From the sale this time.
This doesn't put
It doesn't do anything for the future.
So this is one of their carve outs, instead of going to public auction,
in
their policy, their state policy, carved out that they can sell to us
For public use.
for public use, as long as we can show that, and we do it by resolution, we notify the surrounding landowners.
So we have to follow their rules too. That's fair, black and white, there's people the ability to say we have to do it this way.
And I think that we actually fulfill the requirement if we use it one day as public use. I don't think it's in perpetuity.
I mean, we're already using it, there's water filling up out there.
And the other property is the BMX park, and, you know, it is a,
As long as this doesn't put any type of restriction on the property at a future date, I don't want to limit future city councils or needs of the city.
I think this just completes the sale.
If this completes the sale, then I'm good with it.
And we're doing these as a block, some of these are not ready to be sold to us. Some of these UDOT doesn't even, so. They have.
Good work, right?
They have a freeway over a couple of them, that's why some of these are not carved out along the freeway. It's over total parcel. So we figure if we can do them all at once with this resolution, when the time comes to sell it.
We just complete the sale.
Yeah.
I told you this would be easy. Now the fun one. We are going to discuss the rules for the dog park. Now that we have a dog park, and I'm going to bring Cresta up. Now-
In advance, the TV for the call, that they will do the TV.
I don't know that they will.
Yeah, they will.
When
dogs are fighting? I promise you, the first day
Okay,
that
well-
dog park is open, within 72 hours of being open, they're gonna get a call to that dog park.
Well, I hope not. But I think that the purpose of the rules are not that they would be a legal violation, but just people's best practices and best ideas of how to, you know, it's like suggesting etiquette at the park. And we do this in other parks, and sometimes it's followed and sometimes it's not. But I asked Crest to put together some thoughts on this. This is what Parks and Rec came up with. I think one of the ideas was we want to keep it short enough people will actually read the sign. You don't want to have a list of 40 rules. I've seen a couple of parks that are that long in other states. I don't think anybody reads that. So anyway, Press to take it away.
First of all, let me just say that you don't have to call it Pooch Park, but we looked at a whole bunch of different signs, like from
That's
east
like
to
three
west.
names, that's now, I can't say it.
Yeah, east to west, and we were just trying to make something a little light because we want people to actually read it. So it can be called whatever we want.
You need to change it to perspective of the dog.
Yeah.
Please keep me on a leash.
Yeah,
And I don't like that we are obligating the city to always provide cleanup bags. I'm okay if we have them there, but I want to specifically say, the city will provide you bags.
but.
That's my only thing.
But we will,
We will.
because if you don't, we're requiring them to pick up. So
Agreed.
if you don't have the waste bag there and they don't do it, it's kind of hard.
If you don't put it on here, they're gonna say, but I didn't know you had any.
Yeah.
That's okay, then they have to clean it up with whatever they've got.
What we did is we looked at all these different signs and compiled them into just 7. But we would like also to be able to put it on like the website with more detailed information, but we just want a small sign that's like kind of cutesy, that's like just very basic.
Have it,
stuff.
Preston.
Yeah.
Preston's Kimball.
No.
Yes.
Been honest.
I get named after the dog.
For somebody who doesn't even want or didn't want the dog park for years.
I don't blame you.
So anyway, I think they did a really good, I think they did a really good job of consolidating the rules down to some, you know, very reasonable points. Are there any things that you think just totally didn't get covered? We looked at a lot of samples.
I think the only thing I didn't like was waste bags were provided. They will be, but I don't like to be. I mean, come on, if you're a pet owner, you should.
Do you want us to take that off? And
No,
If we're gonna
Yes.
do it, I don't think it
I mean,
hurts.
we're gonna be friends.
You ever lost the canine? The Syracuse, have we ever lost a canine? No. Yeah, so that's a good name to name it after a dog, but we haven't lost one.
Yeah.
Waste bags are provided, donation to help them.
I don't think that's Park City.
I think that, I personally would like, on the pole where you're gonna put bags in the waste receptacle, a separate sign that just mentions, in order to keep this park open, please clean up after yourself. I want people to realize it is their responsibility. You want a park like this, you have to take care of it. I don't want anyone to think that there's some suggestion in here that the city is taking care of the food. We are not.
Those little metal signs that say that like, clean up your dog food and just put them on inside facing in, like one every like 25 feet or something, so.
I don't really
It
want
might
to say.
seem excessive, but then they can't say they didn't know.
Well, I
People are
think
very
just
good at
one
saying
on
they
the
didn't know.
floor, if you're gonna put bags on it, you're gonna stick them above the garbage can. On that same pole, maybe say, clean up after yourself, or, you are responsible for keeping this open.
What are
You-
What are the fines for violation of these rules?
I don't know who's gonna be sitting there.
I wasn't there yet.
Well, let me tell you,
They're gonna call the PD. The neighbors are calling the PD. I'm telling you. Look it, he already knows.
they do say that people, if you have other people in there, they'll police them and come after them. if you're not-
Yeah, and if you don't, guess who they're calling?
At a conference, they're now doing dog poop DNA.
Oh my God.
You have to sign up your dog and get in their DNA and then, yeah. Crazy guys.
This is gonna be the most dramatic park in the
They do
city,
that
and I don't think you
apartments
guys
all the
realize that.
You think it's gonna be that used?
I do.
Oh, yeah, and I think it's,
All right.
I think it'll be the same
I think
people
it's
over
great.
and over and over.
good thing I don't take my dogs anywhere. I don't even know dogs.
Another
Yeah,
question for you guys is, we're doing it sunrise to sunset. That's what we would like the hours.
I
Obviously,
think
you guys
that's
will tell us.
Yeah.
And then Syracuse City may close the park without notice, because we looked everywhere and pretty much people keep the dogs park open year round,
Mhm.
except for Clearfield, but they also note on there that it's open daily. They just, if it's getting bad, because they have kind of grass like we do, and if they're seeing it needs repair, then they'll shut it down to repair that for.
They shut theirs down during the winter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
but-
but if you notice, if you look on their sign, it says daily, and then it has that, we have the right to close it. And so I called them and said, like, are you guys, you're the only ones I know that close it, and they said it would be mush and mud if we
And
didn't.
the dogs
So it
dig in
gets-
those piles, yeah.
So it gets to a point where we have to close it, so we want that option too, to be able to do that if we need
I
to.
agree.
But our goal would be to be able to keep it open for.
Yeah, and I think that's just the park maintenance. You reserve that right. I think that when it comes to my experience with dog parks, is I do have a dog and I've taken him to neighboring dog parks to do the investigative research, because we're big on that. I don't think that there's many people that have ever called that I've ever experienced, but it could happen. It just, I think that people get used to the fact that you have to be a responsible dog owner or.
Did you talk to Syracuse or South Ogden PD? Have you talked to them? Oh my gosh,
And I've
over
got
half their
one-
calls come from that dog park. Yeah.
And always
And I
looking
got
at
some
park.
other dogs at their dog
South
park that
Ogden
didn't know they had
PD is
one.
like, if they could shut that dog park down, they would do it in a heartbeat.
We restricting it to
Excited
just
open
dogs.
parks up.
Yes.
It's a dog park.
Well, what do you want else besides
You know what?
cats?
We need a cat out there or like a horse?
And that's what I mean.
That's what I was asking.
We can put that in the more
You guys seen
detail,
up there?
because you could put no dogs, no, I mean, old dogs only, you can put kids under the age of this can't handle the dogs, and so there's tons of rules that we can also add in there. So
But you have something that
Great.
says,
I didn't see anything that actually says like use at your own risk.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was,
Like a
Yeah.
strong language, use at your own risk.
There's a,
Bites.
owners are legally responsible for the behavior of their dogs at all times. I thought we did have something like that, but we could
I
add
didn't
that.
see anything that says use at your own risk.
Yeah, we could
Because
add that.
bites happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I
well, you
think
don't want to put bites happen on there.
No.
But still use at your own. I
Good thing
mean,
No,
they're-
it is up to it is up to the dog owners to be responsible, and they take the risk. That you go to the dog park, you can't say, well, I have this problem and it's somebody else's fault. It's your fault. You took your dog to the dog park.
yeah, that's where we got like they're legally responsible for their dog.
remember that when someone calls you and
that's
says,
kind
the
of like
cops
the-
told me it was my fault, so I took my dog to the dog park. Be like, well, the cops
No.
were right.
I know you have a
That's
right
true.
to not go.
It's like people that walk over the fence at the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
So if my kid falls off a
Right,
playground,
exercise your Second Amendment.
Yeah, so if you have any ideas of what we can name it besides Preston Kennel, maybe Mon Mutt, I don't know. Preston Kennel. Anything else? You good?
I'm sorry, man. Do, Chris, do we expect these rules to be enforced?
This is the problem. This is what we, Chad and I, when we were looking at this, is that's why there's so many things, we're not gonna be there watching it. So we're hoping, but we can enforce it if somebody calls in and says, you know, there's 15-year-olds playing football in the park, we can go and be like, you know, kick them out.
Well,
Who's gonna go? Who's
Just
gonna
an
call?
example,
They'll call us or they'll
if
call
we
them.
get a call that says, I just watched somebody not pick up after their dog.
You'd say, well, yeah, you can, you know, if the park doesn't get cleaned up, then it's gonna end up closed.
Well, no, I'm just saying when we get the call.
It's a violation.
You shouldn't.
You will.
So
But,
my
yeah.
question being, this says rules and guidelines. Rules are rules, guidelines are guidelines, right? But this says both. My thought being like, look, if we don't plan on having any of this enforced,
I don't
let's
think-
name it a guideline and just tell people, yeah, those are guidelines, use them, you know, be good citizens.
I think that this, like many other parks, has to be self-enforced, and it has to only be enforced by us when it's way out of hand. I think that this is why we hope that people will encourage others to pick up after their dog, because they want to keep the dog park open. And I think we only have to shut it down once, because people are not picking up after the dog before other dog owners start putting pressure on people to do
So
what they're
maybe we
supposed to
need
do.
to add a very specific number in there that says non-emergency calls pertaining to the dog park will not be responded to.
You could just have a QR code that links to the Facebook page where they can
Stop
change
it!
videos
Stop it!
of people not
Public
picking up
shaming
their
works.
dog.
Public shaming works. If you don't want to be called out on it, don't do it.
They all know, they all know.
Oh, they don't need the QR code.
You haven't noticed, they already know.
That's not a bad idea.
Let's listen to Brody.
So already, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Park and Rec employees, police department have the right to trespass
Yeah,
a person from our parks. So I think if you have someone who is becoming a problem, you know, not following the guidelines, we can trespass them, and so then if they're found at the park, then they're automatically in violation.
A
What,
trespassing ticket.
what if there's an aggressive dog that we're made aware of? Is the policy to then trespass that owner and not allow them back in the park?
Trespass the dog, I would say, so it would have to
You
be.
can't
the owner.
trespass a
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah,
but
so
you,
it would have to be. the
Yeah,
owner.
it's in the rules, it does say, that, yeah.
Only dogs.
So, and I think that that's,
But then now here comes up the neighbor to neighbor problem. A dominating dog is different than an unfriendly dog. And here's where you're gonna get a lot of your phone calls. When your dog is being aggressive to mine and when they're doing their pecking order thing. And that's,
Long as there's
get control of your dog, but they're in a
No.
big giant enclosed area that they're allowed to do that. And
it's
that's where the
back
problem
to
comes.
Julie's, use at your own risk.
Yeah, that's,
You
you're
come at
right.
your
That's
own
you say
risk.
that's
And
specific, like.
the dog, you know, the dog might be overbearing, but it's not biting and.
Yeah, that's
tearing
right.
to shreds. It's just being, you know, that's a dog.
Your own risk, failure to comply with these rules and guidelines will result in.
Just guidelines. not-
Sorry, failure to comply with these guidelines.
I'm just
Um,
pressing from a liability perspective. If there's an aggressive dog that attacks another dog or a person, we're informed about it and we allow that to happen again. When that person gets an ambulance chaser attorney, they're suing
Well,
us too.
That's an emergency call. That's
Well-
different.
Tell us.
They'll try. But the use at your own risk sign.
That will.
So number 8,
that
we need
should
to do
take
use at
care
your
of
own
it
risk.
If it happens.
Okay,
You want number 8, use at your own risk?
yeah, I think that's,
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like we should put on there too, non-emergency calls will not be responded to, just because you're gonna get so many of them. And if there's not a dog bite or someone's bleeding or something like that, it's just a waste of officer time. To go out there and these little neighborly wanna argue with each other because their dogs are sniffing each other's butts, you know? It's the most pettiest stuff that they call about.
Well, you put
I'm-
you
I'm-
did put 911.
Contact
Right?
South Ogden and
Yeah.
ask them if there's
In
emergency.
case of emergency, if there's an
Yeah.
emergency, that's within any park.
Emergency and
Yeah.
bold.
Yeah.
that's a, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
And
sure,
But
But
there will
emergency
be-
is in the eye of the beholder.
I'm sure there will be a support group for bullied dogs.
I got no
But,
doubt.
but they will work it out.
First thing I
Probably
think we're
better
gonna
than
hear
people.
about is why isn't this cut in two sides for the small dogs and the big dogs to be separate?
Yeah, go build your own park. We did-
That's gonna be one of the first things.
We listened to some other dog experts that said you don't do that.
I
They're
believe you, but
friendly
that's,
dogs, they're friendly.
I mean, I thought at first that was the way you're supposed to build them, but after my research, more of them are not built that way and they recommend that they do go. So we listened to the other side of the.
extrovert dogs on one side, the introvert dogs on
Little
the
dogs
other.
think they're big.
Only one of those is a party.
My little dog thinks he is the biggest dog.
Right, they
and-
little dogs think they're-
Yeah.
Shall we move on to item G?
Yeah.
Well, maybe. All right, so. Did we get that? We're good with
Yeah, we're gonna
that?
add the use at your own risk.
Okay.
We'll decide about the name, and everybody, let us know if there's.
I mean, I'm okay with dog park.
In Syracuse.
Do a dog in the museum.
There's no dog out there.
Call 911.
Okay,
Use at your own risk, call 911. Those things should be together somehow.
Okay.
all right,
Emergency, big.
let's go to our fraud
Like, it's your
assessment. We
own
have to do this every year.
You might be calling
And-
911.
On to the
I think
exciting.
it's pretty good. I'm expecting we did pretty good again this year.
Yeah, there's no real change from last year. We're considered low risk. I'm not gonna go through that many of these in detail, but if you guys have any questions, let me know.
No, this, I mean, we're in the top area again, so. I think we've consistently assessed that the only things we don't do are financially impractical, so. Like setting up our own private hotline or something like that.
We actually just refer to the state for the hotline.
Yeah.
We put a link on our website.
Which is good enough. Any questions on this? All right, let's just go on. We have had on the agenda a few times, we have some police vehicles that have reached their life cycle.
How do we have a Pontiac Sunday?
That's 1999.
Okay, because, that was available years ago and we need to surplus.
I didn't know we still had one of
We have a
those.
couple of cars that we should keep.
Pontiacs haven't been built in decades.
You're right.
It was an old school undercover bait vehicle.
Cute.
So it wasn't like used
Oh,
police.
got it.
It wasn't marked up as a cruiser.
I feel like this one needs to get
Instead
sent
of
to a high
surplus it.
school kid.
Put a nomination form for who gets to use it each week.
I think there's 3 that we can cycle through.
Okay,
So
so.
does it start better than the Dodge Durango?
Well, maybe
Or
longer.
the Ford Explorer.
Exactly.
All right, so I guess the point is that we know we have a life cycle on these things. Is anybody got any objections to surplus here?
I mean, the newest one is almost a decade old,
I know.
so. I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
I love when, I know a few weeks ago, we got the complaint that all of our vehicles are brand new, and I look at this list.
I know.
Nope.
That's a very good case study.
You know what we started telling people when they complain about our vehicles? I'm like, you gotta get closer. Like, we just make them keep them washed.
The
You gotta
Pontiac,
get closer.
the Pontiac Sunfire can be used exclusively to respond to dog park issues.
Yeah, with the wee woo lights on it.
Okay,
Pooch Patrol.
I think I'm gonna bring us back to this meeting because we're.
Let's not do that.
Give a bright.
Discussion regarding
bright
proposed
green
amendments to the Syracuse Municipal Code related to the creation of the Assistant City Manager position. I'm gonna really sum this one up pretty quick, because we haven't had a assistant city manager. There's no reference to it in our code, and we need to make that reference before we get one. So that's pretty much everything that encompasses this. Was there any particular thing somebody wanted to point out? Because we will probably have to adjust this again later after we start using this.
Agree. I think this gets them at
This-
least the
this
ability
gets
to
us
act.
Yeah,
And then I think we'll refine the duties as we.
it will happen over time, especially after we hire somebody, because we had just by way of FYI, we had 34 qualified candidates. We had many more who were unqualified candidates. The pool was good, it was really strong. So, but there are different skill sets, and in a position like this, you accommodate the job to the skill sets that you decide to hire for. So they, after this person we hire, let's say they live out their career, the next person you might hire with a few different skill sets and divide up the duties a little bit different. So the point is, this isn't a hard and fast thing. This is a generalized, there's so many managerial or jobs you need two people
And are we good with having city council assist like we have in the past in a lot of these positions?
for hiring. So we already have
The
that.
interviews.
Okay, so what we've done, I'll just update you on this. We took the first round and Brody and I pulled through to get the first down to 10.
Yeah.
We thought that was reasonable than having everybody read 34.
Actually like 7.
Well, we started with 10
Yeah.
and then between the three of us, we threw 3 of them out. Because we kind of agreed that they were just barely on the edge anyway. So then after that 7, we approached them and we were gonna do this week. Brody and I are gonna do a Zoom interview to find out who's serious and who maybe on paper looked good, but was a false flag of a candidate.
Can we have city council get involved in the process? Or at least, you two.
We finished where we're at. We're hoping that from that, we may still have 7. All we're doing is trying to vet whether they are really who they say they are, or if they're kind of not. After that, we do have a round where there will be 2 city council members involved in the formal interview process. And we will have that next week.
Next Friday.
Next Friday is the target. We haven't got them exactly scheduled. We do have 2. We've asked Paul and Julie to be on that committee. So we've also asked a former city manager who is current one now, but former city manager who left to retired and now is another city manager, but another city manager. So it will be 5 people on that committee.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good makeup to get there. At that point, if it's unclear, we may go another something, but we figured at that point, we got a pretty good idea. So we're hoping, there could be, in that round, there could still be 7. There could be 4. We won't know yet until we have these Zoom calls and find out if any of them are just, the only thing that's going to cast them out is if people just really didn't measure up to their on-paper resume. And that's what we decided was fair to do before we involve more people.
Okay, but as far as these changes in the packet, I think,
Yeah, because 34 was a lot to ask everybody to get through. Is everybody okay with that? That's the process we came up with. Yep. Okay.
So we'll put that on the agenda for 15.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And we might have a person to propose at that point by 15. We don't know. All right, item J. Discussion regarding coordination of rapid response to legislation issues during the 2025 legislation session. The reason that this has come up, and I think it's a good one, is staff has noted that some years things get really urgent. I mean, they happen within just a couple of days. We don't have a meeting to discuss things. So we wanted to discuss how we're going to get information and get your feedback during these rapid response type things during a legislative session. I know that there are several that have already been mentioned. There are going to be some bills that deal with land use. A lot deals with us. There will be people addressing the homeless issues.
Impact fees.
Yeah, impact fees is one that somebody trying to limit how we deal with impact fees. And actually, one bill is suggesting we no longer get impact fees. So
You can take a test to do this job. I am sorry, but the more and more I see these elections come up, I'm like, we need to take tests to do this job.
okay, so the question on the table is how do we get some quicker feedback? And I'm gonna let Brody kind of start this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's outlined in the packet, there's some suggestions on, some options or a combination of options. But the idea is, the council has decision-making authority, but the council is also restricted on the speed by which they can make those decisions. You can delegate for purposes of influencing legislation. You can delegate, based on your parameters that you've given a person or a group to go go forth and talk with, you know, the legislators. So, yeah, I won't go through the whole packet there because you've read it, but, that was kind of the idea. Want to see what your thoughts.
So this is gonna be a question for you. So when I brought forth the open meetings information, one of the specific criteria of a public meeting is that it is something over which you have jurisdiction. We can talk about anything we want, even make decisions together, as long as it's not something that is within our jurisdiction within the city. I would argue that a bill at the Utah legislature would fall under that same purview, because it is not something under which we have jurisdiction. We can talk about it. So I think we could actually all have a group email, all respond to that email and not have it be a meeting unless we start delving into
How do we
city
apply this?
policy.
Yeah.
But talking about a bill amongst all of us, I think that falls outside of our jurisdiction because we are not in control of that.
It depends on what the bill is about, obviously.
Well, even if it's about code changes.
If I were to try to sue the city, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just devil's advocate. If I were to try to sue the city, my argument would be, your meeting that you most definitely had was not discussing the passing of a bill, because that's obviously the state legislature review. Your meeting was to discuss what is the city's policy on that bill. And that's the decision you made in that public meeting.
Okay. No, that's a good,
That's how I would argue against it.
a good rebuttal.
What have we done in the past on this? I don't even remember.
So the last session, we didn't do anything.
Well,
At least the council did.
so the theory on this is that we're able to appoint 3 voting and 2 non-voting members to the league's
GLA.
LPC league,
Legislative Policy Committee.
legislative policy committee, the LPC. So that's what we can do. But because they typically meet at the noon hour on Mondays during the session, that it eliminates most council people who have a job from in all cities. This has been an ongoing frustration of city governments with the league, is that they meet when nobody can go to those meetings. They have changed it over the years, because when I started, you had to be there in person or you were just not there. Now they actually have a Zoom option. When I say you had to be there in person, you had to be one of their locations. They did have some southern Utah and eastern Utah locations you could drive to and be in a connected conference call.
There's nothing in Davis County.
No. So you have to go to the state capitol to do this, but now they'll let you in on the Zoom meeting. I will say that I've been on these Zoom meetings, very hard to get anyone who is not in the meeting a chance to talk at all. So, and they go very fast because, they've got a couple hundred bills they're trying to deal with, and you've got 1 hour that they will address only the most hot topics that they're trying to take a position on.
Yeah, and sometimes even that weekly meeting is too slow.
It's too slow.
Because they'll
yeah.
send out an email alert on a Wednesday and say, hey, the legislature's getting ready to move on this.
By Friday.
This is the direction they're headed, and they're gonna vote on Friday.
So we, in the past, we have tried to, have people be more influential in that. I mean, I've been to those meetings when we did actually have 5 people from the city physically there in the meeting. But it's just not very practical anymore, the way that jobs work. So I think that we should probably be able to email each other or email information. But I think that we do have to be individual responses because of the Open to Public Meetings Act.
I accept Brody's rebuttal and see us with.
I feel like we can send out the same email to everybody under blind carbon copy, and we can all respond. We just won't see each other's responses, but you will.
Yeah, that's okay.
So if you just send them to us under BCC, we can reply to you. We're not gonna see each other's. So I feel like that just solves the problem.
I agree.
That way it keeps the entire thread in one email for you in case it's questioned, then it can just be pulled up that way.
Okay, so.
And then you would just put the city manager and the city attorney in the 2, and then the
Right.
BCC would be the rest of us.
I hear hear what you're saying, and we're gonna have Cassie weigh in on this. For the record, a blind copy is not showing you were copied on an email for an official record.
He can speak to this, he's our tech guy.
The mayor is correct in that fact. That is not something that will hold out casting bill back.
Yeah, so that's the problem is if I put everybody on blind copy and somebody says, you failed to inform the council. I say, no, I didn't. I blind copied him. Legally, I didn't copy or, because there's no proof that I
It
did.
doesn't show up in your sent.
Nope, I have zero insight into that.
Yeah,
Even if there's something just between, I know who it goes back and forth to. I have zero insight into, yep, mayor did send it to Jen. Jen did get this.
so if we were challenged legally, that's the problem that we're coming up against.
I didn't know on these emails, you couldn't see that. But on all my sent emails, I can see who I sent BCCs to.
Because you said it. But see, other people can't see it, so if I get a grandma request that says, did the mayor actually inform people?
You
it's
can
gonna-
show your sent box and say, look,
That's what I mean,
I'm
yeah.
not sure,
You can carbon,
You can show your-
carbon copy and
Right.
single reply.
Just,
Yeah.
yeah, we all know the difference between reply all and just reply.
Yeah, but apparently some people end up in a hurry and hit reply all instead of just reply.
You're
Why'd
gonna
you
have to
look
put
at
a
Jordan? Why'd you
bold.
look at Jordan?
If you learned anything, if you put it in bold, people will pay attention.
Why would there not be
With stars,
collaboration? I
yeah.
don't understand that.
we want collaboration, but
Bold, do not reply all.
open public meetings, if you all send it to each other, and then we're now having a public meeting. But we didn't properly notice that so that other people could witness it. So that's the problem. It's the Open and Public Meetings Act. And if they'll rescind that, we could go back to doing it, but he knows how that made Colin laugh at least. Yeah, we can't get away from that, unfortunately.
agree. So yeah, I think we all need to learn how to hit the reply button instead of reply all.
I don't reply to it anyway, so.
And if there's time available and there's a big issue and it's
You could call
complicated, we could call an electronic meeting.
I like that idea.
Where and that was one of the options in.
Well, yeah, there's not clarity,
Utilizing
there's not clarity, let's say, hey, let's get together and discuss.
Agree.
And it can be over Zoom. You don't have to actually drive to City Hall and.
Fantastic.
And speed is something too, because sometimes these issues, they get real crazy, and then all of a sudden they're gone. It disappears, and so
Very fluid.
it is very fluid.
So I like the idea of doing electronic meetings as much as possible, also utilizing email. The question is, do we want to do anything with a legislative subcommittee? Where I think when we've done it in the past, we all got different
Assignments.
like I was over infrastructure and technology, and someone else was over, I don't even know what else is in there. Code enforcement, things like that, building.
When you do that, you're
Taxation.
trusting that somebody else will read all these bills, and that's okay, but it doesn't always happen.
I know I spent hours trying to comb through and figure out which bill was which.
And that's the toughest part, is some of these bills don't even make it out of committee.
Yeah.
And so we could spend a lot of time, because that's what frustration I felt the year that we did that, was I spent a lot of time reading some of these things, and then suddenly it's voted 6-1 out of committee, failure. And I'm like, oh, okay, that was
Waste of
waste
time.
of time.
I feel like I'm the only person that gets to waste my own time, so that would make me excessively upset.
So that would be the issue.
Yeah,
is-
so we all got the
That's
same
not
subcommittees
bad.
is what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea, it's just, it's so fluid. And then you get, maybe you read it today, 2 hours later, a replacement bill was submitted and voted on. And then you say, well, I read that bill, and
It
it's
didn't say
totally
that,
different,
yeah.
yeah. That's the tough part, is some of them get,
And some of them are small novels, some of them are a couple hundred pages that you gotta get through.
I
And
don't
on
think I've
top
ever seen one break more than 30 or 40 pages. Not when it comes to these, unless it's a brand new thing. Most of them are less than
that's
30
still
pages.
a lot of pages.
Yeah. Well, I'm agreeing.
And when you're reading over a bunch of different.
But that's a
bills,
lot of time spent on stuff that's just gonna get axed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So how do you want to do it? If you, so are you saying you don't want to do a legislative committee where some people are responsible for looking at specific
let me
things?
throw out this. I would say that maybe we rely on staff a little bit more to bring forward the ones that seem to be going somewhere.
Okay, this is relevant, like.
Like, because the league will help notice and say this affects cities, and they will leave out the ones that don't really. So we could scan the league reports
Yeah.
and I don't mean.
We should all be getting those emails.
Yeah, and that's a matter of just signing up for them, because you'll get those emails. But we could scan those and say, okay, seems like this year they're actually gonna pay attention to the grocery shop, that, the grocery bag, tax, which has been run for, I think, 12 straight years by someone in Park City and never made it out of committee.
Let's see, my milk comes in a plastic bag, my vegetables come in a plastic bag, my bread comes in a plastic
They
bag.
only charge you $5.
You wanna charge me for a
plastic
plastic
bag.
bag?
Laundry detergent.
Anyway, the point being, we can
But the
say,
bag is
okay,
too
this
far.
one is coming forward and looks real, and we should pay attention to it. And I think if that was sent as an email, we'd have a lot less reading,
Yeah,
everybody.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I am curious about, I want to discuss, what we would want to set up as legislative priorities framework. Are there specific items that we should be prepping as a pre-approved position?
Focusing on.
I think that that's a little beyond this,
It's just on the,
item, but,
it's on the, it's right there. It says, developing a pre-approved legislative priorities
okay,
framework.
but you're saying we actually spend this meeting to do it. I'm
No,
okay with that.
I'm just saying, are there examples of things that we would want
Oh.
to?
I think anything that deals with, land, authority, certainly our ability to, that affects our ability to zone. I
Yeah,
think that's.
agree.
Safety.
We are automatically opposed to the state taking over zoning.
Yes.
Safety is such an expensive thing. I think that's what we need to say. Anything, time they change anything that has to do with safety, it costs so much money.
I would also recommend that we, I'm trying to think how I would say this. I would say that if there are always bills that deal with, special departments, such as first responders or stuff like that, I would say that we take the lead on those from our own department heads. For example, if there was a change in the fire regulations, that we rely on Chief Byington to tell us that we need to pay attention to this one, or it's just going nowhere. Same thing with police. There's always something, whether it's body cameras or, there's always something that's on the tough one is that most of the ones that affect us are gonna come in land use or code enforcement. There will be a bunch that have to do with.
And building code. That all
Building
use.
codes. That's
Municipal fund.
municipal finance, yeah.
Yeah, as far as pre-approved legislative priorities, what we sometimes, not always, sometimes there's items that have been discussed over the interim in legislative subcommittees, like from the legislature. And so those subcommittees already have proposed language for bills. And we can probably talk about those maybe in the December meeting.
We could.
For discussion, and then going into the session starts in January, so things happen after that.
And maybe by December, we'll have some sense of which bills are gonna seem to already have some support, which ones seem to be going nowhere.
One thing. Sorry,
Right.
sure.
I was gonna use the example back to the taxing on grocery bags. That's never had any legs, but I've heard about it every year, so.
One thing, I was chatting to Carrie Ann a couple weeks ago, and she said one thing a lot of the cities around here do is they invite her to one of the January meetings. And they invite all of their legislative representatives. And she says she goes to Clearfield, she goes to West Point, I can't remember all the ones she's over. But she's like, Syracuse has never invited us.
We did one year.
And they just give, and let them take the lead and say, give an overview of what their priorities are for the session and what they're expecting to see and kind of get their take on it and give each of them like 10-15 minutes. And so we invite Carrie Ann, who is it, Stevenson?
Jerry Stevenson?
Yeah. Um,
The senator, yeah, okay.
and just invite all of our representatives that have some stake in our city and have them come and just give us a legislative brief, both, they usually do it before and after the session.
Yeah, I've heard some cities will do that and they kind of call it a little summit or whatever, and the city will actually communicate to them some of the concerns.
Yeah,
and
if we
priorities,
have
so,
priorities, and that's the time to talk to them.
Yeah.
But
I think if we do that, we're gonna have to prepare a meeting ahead of time. So that, these are the things that we'd like to discuss, because we did it one year, and it was kind of a free-for-all, and it didn't go really well.
Okay.
But I think a lot of the things that were brought to our attention that were priorities were not really issues that affected the city. And I
Sure.
think that what we want to do is set parameters, that we want to talk about things that affect the city. And
probably have like an agenda.
yeah, I think we almost have
Yeah.
a sub-agenda for that meeting. And I'm willing to set that up,
yeah, I would like to do that.
okay? But I think that we'll need to prepare a meeting in advance. So if we do that in January, which we can, then in December, we'll need to talk about what we think are the issues we want to talk to them about and have them be prepared for.
Yeah, we've got to have a narrow scope.
Otherwise, we're gonna be out, because like that year, like one of the things was they were really pushing for a Utah War Dog Memorial, which they now have, so that would be it, but that doesn't really affect cities.
Yeah, great. And changing the tax revenue for the school system.
Yeah.
Back there,
Again,
help
not
us.
us.
For the state
Yeah.
flag.
Yeah,
Yeah, we would like to limit it to,
city
specific.
facing issues, yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Not spend any money on it.
Okay, all right, so
Don't want in time.
any other thoughts on that?
No.
Any other thoughts on priorities that you hear are coming? I'll tell you the ones that the league is being, that just this last month have kind of come forward is there's gonna be people talking about code and what you can and can't do with rent. I was in a conversation with Representative Lisenby yesterday because somebody had misrepresented us and suggested that we shut down all building, which not true. And I was able to prove that that was a false statement, but somebody, you know, that's what happens is people put out a false narrative sometimes. The homeless issue is coming back as what we do during Code Blue. And there is a representative here locally that is actually now proposing that the state take on a Code Red, which would mean when it's too hot in the summer, we have to shelter people who are homeless from the heat, which is interesting. The toughest part about this is that Davis County, there was a meeting on Monday, and I'll just use this, kind of loop it in here, but there's a meeting on Monday of city mayors and representatives from the league regarding the kind of mismanagement of the homeless situation in Davis County. And they tried to say, how did this go wrong? And one of the suggestions late in the meeting was, in every other county, there was an obvious choice of who was going to manage the solution. Meaning, in Weber County, Ogden City was going to take the lead because they are the obvious biggest city. In Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City takes the lead. And in Utah County, Provo takes the lead. And in Washington County, St. George took the lead. In Davis County, there isn't an obvious one city that dominates everything. We are the anomaly in a second-class county, meaning we have a lot of people, but we're kind of evenly distributed. So in that sense,
No, Layton is the biggest actually.
but you're right, but it's not bigger like Ogden is bigger than every suburb. It's not to that degree. And so, so the point being is, you know, who should take the lead? And what happened is the county vetoed all of the suggestions and decided they would go their own route. And so that's been difficult because some cities who really have more of an issue than other cities, for example, Layton sees more homelessness than we do because they are a little bit more urban. Clearfield sees more than we do. They had solutions in place to deal with the code blue, meaning when it gets below 18 degrees, how do we help people not freeze to death? And the county stepping in eliminated some of those solutions by saying now it's on the county. So some of the things that we used to do can no longer be done. Meaning they used to offer vouchers. The state no longer approves those because the county asked them not to. So, and most
That
of the
was
hotels-
that was a good deed that got punished.
Yes.
It was a very unuser friendly in the way that a lot of hotels were seeing a lot of damage.
Yeah.
For the rooms that were seeing these vouchers used for. So it just got to the point where the voucher fund itself was being used to fix these rooms. And it ran out of money so fast that it was just not viable.
So anyway, the point being that, these type of things happen and they've got to figure out how to deal with them. So, I'm gonna leave it there. But the homeless issue is still something that's coming up. The, code, enforcement is coming up. There is some bills that say should the cities have more of a ability to manage code through fines and abatements. There's some question as to people's personal liberty. I think that's coming from a Utah County representative suggesting that people have the liberty to be sloppy. Well, I don't know.
Is that protected under the First Amendment?
That's a
Is
question.
that like freedom of speech that you can be sloppy too?
That is the
That's
question.
why we tie it always back into safety.
Yeah. So those are some of the ones that are coming forward. Land use is always hot. There are a lot of people looking at land use and I listened to somebody yesterday try to tell me that they would like the state to step in and provide land for affordable housing. That the state would, but I don't think that's going anywhere. But it was a new idea. Yeah, the state would
Where are
provide.
you gonna fire layout? You know, just gonna build
Yeah.
it or?
They can take it from the LDS church.
Well, they did this in Weber County, just FYI. Weber County approved thousands of homes in unincorporated Weber County that they have the water for. And now they don't know where they're gonna get the water for all these homes, but because there's no city, there isn't a city to fall back on and say they're gonna get the water, but anyway, I'm digressing way too much, so I'm gonna take us back on track and say we will try to figure out how to get you more informed during the legislative session and prior to the legislative session. That we'll take that on as a group. Are there any other things that you want to consider putting on a future agenda? Because we will have a November meeting. The plan at this point is to cancel the November work session because it is 2 days before Thanksgiving. And that's,
Are you serious?
yeah,
Wait. So we need to talk about literally the snow parking thing. And if we're canceling this work session, we're not gonna have one in December.
we'll have we won't have one in December because it's on Christmas Eve. And I think people should be with their families on Christmas Eve
So then why wouldn't we keep the one in November?
because it is,
2 days,
2 days
everybody
prior.
else is still at work.
What we could do is we can combine the business.
we will
session.
combine the business session with the work
We
session.
should probably do that.
And that is the plan. November will be an extra long because we will have a business meeting followed by a work session. So that we go soon get all the work done.
Maybe I can send it to you.
Yeah, we will do that in December as well. But unless you all, I'm not opposed to coming 2 days before Thanksgiving, but you all have to decide that's.
I don't see why we would cancel that one. Have we ever canceled that one?
Every year.
Did we? I don't think it's not even was canceled. Okay,
Then because people have to start traveling for Thanksgiving.
it's Thursday, it's Tuesday night.
It's
If you
Oh, I'm
want,
clearly outvoted on this, but I.
it's okay if you wanna vote for it.
I think I mean,
Historically, we've done.
I've been in your position before and I said, look, I'll beat her, you see, why are we doing this?
they're still working.
Either way, but I don't.
I think if nothing else, it gives the staff the time to be able to.
The time
be
to
home
get to their
To get
family.
ready for their stuff. I can be here. But I would rather let the staff have that time.
And I've
in the
said that in
evening.
the past. as
And if
well.
we can consolidate into one meeting,
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
I mean, if we have to have a second one, but if we can fit it all in the first in the first meeting, I think we should.
And there's a chance that we will have an emergency meeting sometime in November. So that's just,
Tuesday that we're all supposed to be gone.
So,
That's how it works out.
okay.
Right.
Other than that, we had
maybe closed session.
Oh,
We-
tell me we don't have that no more.
we don't,
Yes.
just letting you know that did not, it was no longer needed. The issue was off the side.
You could have said that in the start. I've been dreading that this whole time, like, oh, we have to stay even longer.
Yeah,
So
no,
we're adjourned.
so we are adjourned. And by the way, Brett's excused.